Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to talk about this story that came out a while ago. I saw the images and the clear distinction between the trans athlete and the female athletes, and it was ridiculous. Anybody seeing this photo, I don't see how you could still try and justify males competing in women's sports. And girls in high schools across the country are being affected. Washington State, Oregon, and Connecticut. There's currently a lawsuit going on that has been allowed to proceed, with young female athletes saying that their careers in track and field were essentially derailed and did not reach their full potential because they had to compete against at least 2 trans athletes. So the young ladies featured in this story are who these girls are fighting for. Girls who have to compete against trans athletes if they want to compete at all. Girls who have to be in the locker room with trans athletes if they want to participate. And many are self-excluding, or they've been excluded because they've been bumped out of the tournament or whatever. So the reason why this story has resurfaced, especially on X, is because this photo is doing the rounds again, and also because people are highlighting the extent of what these girls went through in the locker room. And I think we're going to look back at this time and really be ashamed of what we put our young girls through, all under the guise of inclusion, all under the guise of being kind. We're going to look back at this time and be utterly embarrassed. It wouldn't surprise me if there's going to be lawsuits in the future as well. And then we're going to end with some good news about a small town school board in Washington State, one of the wokest states, fighting back against this insanity. So stay tuned. People assume that this was probably the teacher or the coach. No, this is a male student who identifies as a girl. There's height differences, there's size differences, but this picture says it all. And anybody who looks at that and thinks that this is perfectly fair, I don't know what to tell you. Word quickly spread about the issues that had existed inside the girls' locker room. Girls who identify as biological girls and who were born female felt unsafe with the presence of an athlete who was born a male inside the same locker room, especially considering the size differential. That's obvious. Biological girls in this situation often experience psychological issues, feelings of embarrassment, and even feel fearful about joining a team in the first place, especially knowing that a biological boy may be watching them change in the locker room. Bottom line, the biological girls no longer felt safe in their own space. And this is why you're going to find them self-excluding, turning away from a sport that they love, and find that nobody cares about that because they want to include the male athlete. As long as the male athlete is included. And anybody who has an objection, anybody who self-excludes is probably a bigot. They probably need re-education, is it?
And actually, Leah Thomas's teammates who dealt with this every single day all year, when they expressed their discomfort to their administration and they sent an email, and I swear I have a screenshot of their response, their administration responded back with, if you feel uncomfortable seeing male genitalia, here's some counseling resources that you should seek. And that's the general consensus of what's happening around the country, which is why I felt it necessary to get in front of colleges and speak. I think it's so important to engage people my age, 22 years old, to understand what's happening, because that's not what you're hearing in the media.
Maybe they can be provided with some support to help them deal with the penis in the locker room. Maybe some counseling will help them be more welcoming to the male with a penis in their locker room. Obviously, they have every right to feel the way they feel. They have every right to have their fears and concerns acknowledged. They don't need to be gaslighted. They don't need to be dismissed, told to just deal with it and be kind, while the very people telling them that are discriminating against them. How is this justifiable? The Sentinel reached out to the district in order to understand if the situation is still happening. What accommodations have been offered to biological girls who should be entitled to the exact same privileges extended to other students, including ensuring that they have their own safe space where their needs as biological girls can be fully affirmed and met. The biological girls should not be forced into an environment that feels unfriendly or hostile, nor should they be discriminated against for wanting, as a protected class themselves, to have their own safe space. Absolutely. And why is one group elevated above another? Especially when we're talking about desires versus rights. But now, obviously, with Title IX, identity has been put into the same class as biological sex. So even when it comes to, I want to be seen as a woman, I want to be affirmed, they've now made that into a right. So the superintendent, obviously, no surprises there, hasn't responded to this. And this was a while back. However, the board policy that addresses this particular issue, the 500 series non-discrimination, specifically includes gender identity or expression as a protected class, along with other protected classes based on attributes like race, colour, age, sex, religion, and so forth. The policy prohibits discrimination or harassment in educational programs or activities, including athletics, against any protected class. That includes transgender students. It should also, in theory, include biological female students as a protected class too. Students are expected to be respectful to the rights of all members of the school community, which puts the biological girls in a bit of an awkward situation. Would it be considered disrespectful to complain about a student who was born a male, but now chooses to use the girls' locker room? Unfortunately, yes, it would be considered disrespectful. Even with the changes to Title IX, young girls who speak out about this could themselves be accused of harassment, could themselves be accused of bullying. The very legislation that's been put there to protect girls can now be used against them. So unless you're happy having a male in your locker room who's exposing himself, unless you're happy with that, you're a bully, you're a bigot, you're all of these things. You're discriminating against him by not remaining silent and just accepting it and putting up with it. The district policy further describes a hostile environment. So if you have people speaking out and the transgender student feels that they can't participate anymore, or that their participation is going to be hindered because they can't get changed in a girls' locker room, which is the locker room of their choice, they're being told, change somewhere else. If you tell them that, that's classed as discrimination. That's classed as creating a hostile environment, which goes against the district's rules. And this is the situation that has been created. So the moment you speak out as a young woman, you have created a hostile environment, potentially at least. So what the girls have reported is that in the locker room, the girls huddle up in a corner just to get some kind of privacy away from this male athlete or male student. That's simply their way of coping. That's simply their way of getting through these few minutes where you have to get changed to prepare for your meet. Either compete with the male athlete and accept being in the locker room with this person, or you can't participate because the male athlete is going nowhere. That's the situation that these young girls are in. And some young girls have turned away from competing in track and field for this very reason. They have this person in the locker room and they're supposed to be okay with this. And they're being trained and conditioned to be okay with this, which again is very disturbing. By saying that this person belongs in their locker room as a male athlete, you are conditioning young girls to be okay with men exposing themselves to them, whether it's in a public setting or in the girls' locker room. The article goes on to explain how Title IX is now going to affect young female athletes, when the purpose of it in the first place was to protect young female athletes. Even the Biden administration has now backed away from its new Title IX sports rule that would have permitted biological males to identify as females to participate in women's galactic sports as long as they identify as female. But that's not the case in Connecticut, where the Department of Education recently updated guidance for transgender students' civil rights to ensure that transgender students can compete in athletics based on their chosen gender identity. So obviously the Biden administration is going to downplay these things now because they want people to vote for them. Parents are obviously frustrated with the district's discriminatory policy and want to ensure their daughters, who are biological girls, have a safe space and an environment, especially in the girls' locker room and on the field, that is not hostile. Under these conditions, it is hostile towards the girls. And these districts don't seem to care about that. And one parent claims that this is a result of SEL and DEI. SEL is social emotional learning, and we all know about DEI. Although SEL and DEI programs have positive intentions, in reality they can create an environment where not all children feel safe, nurtured and challenged. Too often, girls are receiving the message that their feelings and safety do not matter, said the parent. Parents deserve to be notified when their children will be in intimate settings with the opposite sex and when girls will be competing against boys. Absolutely. That's another thing. We hear about people being blindsided, girls being blindsided, let alone their parents. The female athletes aren't even given any pre-warning. The parents are not given pre-warning. They turn up to compete and there's a male athlete in their locker room. Parents absolutely need to be notified of this so they can make changes and basically withdraw their daughters from such environments. All parents should remain vigilant and engaged during these times, especially during an election year. Absolutely, I totally agree with that parent there. So it's heartbreaking to hear of young girls having to go through that. It really is. They don't deserve that and they should not be put in that situation in the first place. It's unforgivable, it really is. In a situation where there's a man in the locker room exposing himself, they put them in that situation deliberately. How dare they do that? When they should be looking out for the interests of all students. They should be looking out for the safety of all students, not just students who tick a certain box, who will gain them publicity, who will help them become the school who has the track star. When really it's a complete and utter farce, because that person shouldn't even be competing in the girls' team in the first place. Is that how they want to win? Is that how they want to gain publicity? For all the wrong reasons. And they're going to find themselves on the wrong side of history. They're going to be embarrassed when all of this comes to an end. At some point it has to. I hope it's not going to take something tragic to happen before it does. But at least over in Washington, we have a small school board who is not taking this lying down and are fighting back against their woke state.
My name is Gabe Galbraith, and I'm the Ken Oak School Board president. So this resolution actually came about from one of our track coaches in our local school district. And when the Biden administration came out with their new Title IX changes, effectively erasing women's sports, she reached out with some data regarding the competition levels between boys and girls in sports, and it was crazy to see the disparity, right?
My name is Cheryl Schaubel. I am currently the women's track and field coach at Kamaikan High School. I have been that for 42 years. 43 years ago, though, I was an athlete at WSU in track and field. We also had a pivotal happening. Sports took a great step ahead for ensuring women's athletics would be treated equally fair and without harassment. Title IX was in place to protect each of us. Now we are under attack again, allowing transgender athletes to declare their protections under this same law. No law was placed to allow one group to be afforded this while denouncing another. In this case, women and girls in their sport. There is participation rights, but not while denying another group this same right. Girls, women, and boys and men should be placed in their proper category. I'm speaking mainly about track and field because we have separate races for boys and separate races for girls because of the science, the biology, and all of those things. We are seeing that more of these athletes are participating and denying girls in those same events, leaving them home not able to participate. There's a reason track and field is the #1 sport where this is happening, because they're allowing it all across the United States. Biologically compete and define, but not altered. Follow the science. It's destroying girls and women's athletics and running. It's not safe, and it's violating girls' rights to play. Coaches are leaving our profession because of this. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, it's happening in track and field in particular. And bear in mind, there's no requirements for hormones or transitioning of any kind. They just need to identify as a girl. At least in Connecticut, Washington State, and Oregon, last time I checked, the rules are basically saying that they just need to identify as a girl publicly.
Who's to say that someone, a boy who's JV mediocre level decides one day, oh, I'm going to be a female, and then goes out and now they're a state record holder in a female sport. That's just absurd that's how easy it is.
So now we're going to hear from the trans activist, who, in my opinion, doesn't come with any logic, doesn't come with any arguments. It's all emotional. It's all saying that I'm the one who needs to be heard. Trans kids this, trans kids that. Nothing about how it affects the women and the girls.
My name is Cara Noakes. I'm a chef, local business owner, former student of this district, and parent to 4 children in this district. But most importantly to tonight's conversation, I am a trans woman. You don't get to have trans debates without trans voices anymore. I find it hilarious that we once again find ourselves in a position with zealous school board members attempting to defy state's position and rules, which will only affect an already marginalized and at-risk population they have been voted in to protect. And it worked so well the last time. It is because people like those that are attempting to be that I was scared to be myself until I was already an adult. Bullies like that have their minds made up, so I wanted to speak to any of the trans and queer youth in the audience that you are trying to keep scared and quiet. There are more of you than they want you to know. There are more of you than there are them. Use your voice. Do not let them take you out of the conversation. Together you are louder, stronger, and braver than they will ever be. Make it known, work together, demand your rights.
Yet, when it comes to accepting who they are and being their true selves, they never accept the fact that they're mediocre athletes. So it's the voices of girls who actually need to be heard in all of this. Yet those are the voices that are forgotten. So I'm grateful for this school board in challenging the state's woke ideology, in challenging the state's discrimination against girls, in challenging the state's goal of destroying women's sports and having girls having championships stolen from them. This small town school board is doing something that other school boards are too scared to do.
We're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, conservative school district probably in our state. And so when we do something, it kind of opens the door for others to kind of jump in and follow along. And so we've gotten a lot of support from people locally, other city council members and those things. We have too many people just kind of sitting on the sidelines and not voicing their concerns. And so we decided we were going to take a stand, and we came up with this resolution, and we passed it at our local school board meeting just this last week. And we're the first board in Washington State to take a stand against this. And hopefully we can get a bunch of the other school boards on this resolution and maybe affect some change in the state.
So it's encouraging to see that. I really hope that something comes of this. I hope that more school boards come forward and call this out and speak how that coach spoke. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.